You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is March 27th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a special show where we've got Lars Mapstead back on the show again. So we interviewed him a while back on his bid for the Libertarian Party Presidential nomination, and we're going to find out how his campaign is going. But before we get into the show, let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our invisible hand, James Just. He is very visible tonight again. Leon's on vacation, so James, you're the man.
Yeah, I get to play multiple roles tonight. Yay me! Yeah.
and just to give a little more background, James is also the chair of the Sacramento County Libertarian Party. So yay, James!
Yeah, until I can get you to do that, Jason. That's how long I'll be
Okay. Let's see. And we may have Tim dropping in later in the show. His work schedule was a little off tonight, but so it's possible he'll be joining us, our Screaming Eagle of Freedom. And in our lower left-hand corner, we have Lars Mapstead with us down there. And my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host tonight. Again, we always start off our show nowadays with a Liberty quote. So it helps to sort of set the vibe for the show, I hope. And let's jump right into that. So today's Liberty quote is from Mark Twain, or also known as Samuel Clemens. And he was a journalist and kind of a humorist philosopher, I guess you'd call it. But he had this great quote, and I think if you're a libertarian, you definitely have to see this as true. I said, "No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session." Oh, I think that's about as true gets in politics. Do you guys have any thoughts on this particular quote?
Yeah, I every time they threaten to shut down the government, I think, oh, good, finally, we won't have any more authoritarian grabs on us, right? Everybody says that it's such a bad thing to shut down the government, but I think, a lot of people would be a lot better off if they weren't in session as often as they are.
Yeah, kind of gives us a chance to take a breath.
Property aren't safe. Yeah. Well, our life, liberty, and property aren't safe after they've been in session either.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, after they've done passing their laws and all that stuff. Yeah. I don't think it helps that they're not in session anymore. And maybe, it's.
And it does. Yeah, and it doesn't seem to matter.
I guess.
It doesn't seem to matter if it's Republican run or Democrat run legislature. It's always the same, regardless of which party's in control of the legislature.
Yeah, but the size that government's been growing, I mean, it truly gives us a chance to at least take a breath and, get ourselves. It's like when the roller coaster slows down for a second. But anyways, let's jump into the show now, and we'll start finding out a little bit more about how Lars' campaign is going. So first, let me bring up Lars' pages so that you can go check these out as well. You go to lars24.com, and you can go find out more about Lars and his positions, and what he thinks. That there's certainly this issue about unrig our elections on it, and we're actually going to watch a little video on that as well. But Lars also has a little bit about his background too, so it's a pretty good webpage. So definitely encourage you all to go check it out. But I want to start off by kicking this off with our first video, and this is really shows you. I think it characterizes what Lars' campaign is about pretty well. So let's take a look at that.
If I say the system is rigged, that brings up something in your mind. Maybe it's education, maybe it's the economy, healthcare, something like that. Everybody has an idea of why the system is rigged, and it's causing division in our country, because when you don't feel like the system is fair and equal, it agitates you. They'll tell you how to run your life, and then they'll completely do the opposite thing. No, there's no accountability. And when you start putting this whole picture together, it feels overbearing that the system is so rigged. What can we do as people? Congress is not doing their job so that they don't have to be responsible when things are falling apart. Part of unrigging the system is to start chopping away at this bureaucratic state and make them do their job. So one of the things that I think would fix some of the problems is term limits. And I say, if you haven't figured out how to do your job in 12 years, you probably shouldn't have the job in the first place.
Our whole election system is rigged. We need a whole overhaul of our entire election system. I never planned to enter politics, but witnessing our government becoming increasingly authoritarian and hypocritical, I could no longer idly sit by. This election will likely pit Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the exact same candidates we had last time, against each other. Many Americans are fed up with these choices. They feel like they have no other option. We libertarians must present a credible alternative to the duopoly candidates. If we can get just 36 electoral votes, we can prevent either of them from winning and force the duopoly to listen to us. This is a great opportunity for us, and we must not waste it. Let's unite to make the Libertarian Party a powerful force, demonstrating that individual liberty, limited government, and free markets are the keys to a prosperous future for everyone.
I'm not part of any caucus. I'm not looking to become part of any caucus. What I'm looking to do is work with people that are good people that have a good message.
If you're ready for bold action, support me, Lars Mapstead. If you're fired up as I am, I ask you to join me at lars24.com.
And that is a really awesome ad. To me, it really screams to libertarians what the Libertarian Party is all about. Do you want to, I guess, tell us a little more about what it means for you, Lars?
Yeah. Well, we were trying to find a campaign slogan, and at first I was really interested in this idea that our election system is rigged, that we have the illusion of choice in America, that there's so many issues that are going on with it. But I felt like majority Americans, while they believe that the election system is rigged, it's not the number one thing on their mind, right? And so I didn't want to go with just unrig our elections. But the more we started getting into our policy, the more we started to realize that everything is rigged. Our election system, our criminal justice system, our economy, our education system, all these things are rigged. And if I say the system is rigged, that brings something into your mind, because everybody has had government kind of get on them to a certain degree. And so we really embraced unrig the system. And we have literally 37 pieces of policy under 5 major planks to unrig the system and kind of make it more fair and level the playing field for all Americans.
Well, yeah, that's certainly an excellent message, especially given everything we've seen with COVID and all the other things going on around that. My gosh, I think that made everybody aware that things were a little more rigged than they thought before COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is really the impetus for really pushing me over the edge to run. I just saw. I live in Santa Cruz, California, and we were really draconian on the lockdowns. I saw, there was older couples that were watching the sunset in their cars, and the police were telling them to go home, that they couldn't be outside, and it was just really draconian. And the hand of government got really overbearing. And so I think, I want to stop that from happening again. And that's part of why I'm running for president, is just we have to limit government. We have to limit this overreach. They picked winners and losers left and right in California, which businesses could stay open, which ones couldn't. They applied the rules and the laws unevenly and unfairly. And that just smacks of, crony capitalism and corrupt government to me.
Well, James, before we move on, did you have any thoughts on the video too? Before we, because I certainly had some topics I wanted to jump in with Lars about, but I didn't want to jump away from this unless you had some thoughts you wanted to.
Oh, Jason, you just have to throw me under the bus. I was doing back end work while the video was playing, so I wasn't watching.
Well, I implore you to go watch it after the show. It's an excellent video. As far as
working hard. That's what.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as far as the campaign goes, I know, Lars, this has been your first run, I guess, for office. And so we talked to you earlier about, I don't know, but it's been about 8 or 9 months ago now that we talked to you. And so I guess one of the things we like to share with viewers is, so they can understand what it is to get up and try and make a difference. So how has the campaign been going for you? And it's, has this been like a positive experience? Have you been, what kind of things can you share from the trail that, if somebody else really wanted to do what you're doing, or to even just make a difference at a lower level, maybe some of your experience, how can maybe you can share a little bit of that with them?
Yeah, well, like you said, I think it was about maybe 9 months to a year ago that I was on before, and it seems like almost a lifetime ago, to be honest with you. So much has gone on in the last 9 months or so in the campaign. My growth personally, this is a really challenging thing. I ran a lot of companies. I ran a big company called FriendFinder Networks, which is like dating websites. And, we had 600 employees. We were doing $350 million a year in sales. And so, I'm a guy that does startups. And so running a presidential campaign is very much like a startup, but I'm working harder than I have at any time in the last 30 years. I am just really nose to the grindstone. This is a real, wake up and do the deal every day, fly somewhere every weekend, talk to delegates, rope delegates in different states. I've been to 25 states now, state conventions, getting delegates together. So it's been a real process. I think, I've enjoyed it. It's a lot of hard work, but it really is kind of fulfilling to go around the country and see your message resonating with people and really connecting with regular folks all across the country and listening to the issues that are affecting them and knowing that your policies will solve a lot of things for those people, and so I think that's good. So yeah, the campaign is going great. Financially, it's been a lot more bigger than I thought it was going to be. Initially I had kind of budgeted $250,000 for my campaign. And to this point now, I've spent over $700,000 on the campaign. So it's so it kind of got a little bit out of control in that sense. But I've put together an incredible team. Like I said, running for president is a lot like running a startup, and so I knew I had to put together a rock star team if I wanted to really win this nomination. I think we have the team not only to win the nomination, but we have the team in place now to carry us over into the general election and really put into place all the plans that I have put forward in order to gain a win for the Libertarian Party and get us national attention that we deserve.
Wow. Yeah, that's really eye-popping, those numbers as far as how much it's costing. Certainly, for Republicans and Democrats, we definitely understand that they're willing to drop, millions upon millions of other people's money on these things. But as far as, your campaign goes, is that the norm for a libertarian candidate, or is this more or less?
No, I don't think it's the norm at all. I just, like I said, I had a big company. I sold that company in 2007 for $500 million. So I have the resources to do this, but the money that I've spent so far on this campaign is more than all the other candidates have raised combined. So it's not the norm. And to be honest with you, the money that I put in is not enough. Like, really, we need like $5 to $10 million to really make a real impact. And that's one of the struggles that the Libertarian Party has, is fundraising and getting people on board. Even though we're the third largest party in America, we only have 700,000 registered libertarians. So it's less than 1% of America is registered as a libertarian. And I think that that's something we desperately need to change. And that's what my campaign is about. My campaign is about getting every American to Google what is a libertarian, because I believe that there are millions and millions of people that believe just the way that we do. But because the media suppresses any other ideas or thoughts, the message isn't getting out there. It took me a long time to find the Libertarian Party, even though I was leaning libertarian the entire time. I had to take one of the online quizzes before I found out I wasn't a Republican or Democrat. I always knew I wasn't those things, but I didn't know what I was. And so I want everyone to at least have the opportunity to see our message, hear our message. And
really, really quite a good ad. But that does bring up the question. I mean, it's like, how do you reach these people, that are, I guess, notoriously hard to reach? I mean, that's part of the reason why I guess the other parties spend so much money on trying to, I think about the problem we have in our electoral system, that, they spend all this money on television advertising. And I guess now that's starting to evolve into different areas. But I always thought, that they're literally trying to pitch themselves during a primetime show when somebody's likely to get up and go to the bathroom bathroom or something else, and you're trying to catch them with a 1 minute snapshot or less of what the campaign is about. So I guess, where are you trying to reach people with these ads? Is it just through the internet, or are there other places?
Yeah. So, that was my background. Is I've literally spent over $100 million on Google ads and Facebook ads and Twitter ads over my career. So I'm really good at getting the most bang for the buck out of those advertising dollars. And so I've been advertising mostly on Twitter. I did Facebook quite a bit, but their costs kind of went up. But Twitter's costs are really cheap still. And I'm reaching about 500,000 people every day with my ads on Twitter. And every time I go to a convention, the people are like, "Oh, I see your ads all the time. I don't see anybody else's ads." And I'm like, "Well, that's because they're not running ads, right?" So if you want to get the message out there, you have to get in front of people. And so not only am I doing that, but I'm literally going on probably 100 podcasts at this point since the last time I was on your show. And so, I had some really good podcasts. I did the Kim Iverson show, and that was really good. I was able to convince her that, descheduling drugs was a much better option than continuing the war on drugs. And I thought that was really a powerful thing to be able to kind of convince somebody to change their opinion on that, and I have a good story about that, which resonates with people, and I have some compelling ideas about that, so getting the message out is number one critical thing, and I believe that I'm the candidate for the Libertarian Party that can get the message out to the most people possible, just because of my background and experience that is different than what the other candidates have.
So I have to ask a question as part of the inner circle of the party, even though I'm on the outside of the inner circle of the party. How are you going to deal with people not like me, but you're not a real libertarian problem when someone from the outside comes in? And you get those of us among our family who will claim anybody who is not like them is not a real libertarian. So how do you deal with that one? Well,
I mean, first of all, the thing is the way you become a real libertarian is you have to get 10 people that are libertarians that tell you that you're not a real libertarian, and then you get your real libertarian ad from the people. The thing is look, I think, one of the things I talk about is that the Libertarian Party has a common purpose. Everybody that's in the Libertarian Party has one common purpose, and that is to reduce the state. Some of them want to reduce the state to 0 people, and some want to reduce it to 6 people, but we can all agree until we get to those 6 people that we're reducing the state, and that's our primary goal, right? And so I think that is, to me, that's the litmus test of whether you're a libertarian or not. If you want to increase the state, you want to increase authority over people's lives, you want to use government to tell people how to live their lives, then you're not a libertarian. If you want to reduce the state and you want people to have their own free will and be more voluntary and be personally responsible for their own actions, then you're likely to be a libertarian. And there's all flavors from here to there of it, but as long as you want to reduce the state, you're on my team.
Okay. So basically, whether you're an anarchist or minarchist, it seems like the journey is so far to zero government that we're all minarchists in our lifetime, I guess, practically, right?
That's right. I mean, yes. And, the thing is, the North Star is that there would be no government, but it's going to be a long way before we get there, and it probably not in my lifetime. So what we can do is just whittle away at the state at every opportunity that we get.
What I used to say was, we're on the same freeway. We may have different exits somewhere down the road, but until we get to that somewhere down the road, why are we arguing?
Yep.
But
100%.
We have that tendency to argue amongst ourselves, likely because we're the ones who will listen to ourselves. So I think there's part of that problem is we end up surrounding ourselves with ourselves. And so because we're willing to argue, unlike the other groups who will not argue with themselves, we will. And so I actually, in a sense, I love the fact that we're willing to argue with ourselves. We're willing to push ourselves. We're willing to test our ideology. The problem is when new people come in, we have to play nice with them for a little while until they're used to that culture. And we have a tendency to not do that.
Yeah. I think that the duopoly also has the same problems. You saw in the RNC, they just canned the chairwoman of the RNC. You saw that happen when Hillary was running. They got rid of the chair of the Democratic National Committee. So I think there's a lot of infighting. They don't necessarily hang it out there to dry and let everybody see, but I think all political parties probably have a lot of infighting. I think that's just part of politics, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, the thing is, they're big enough to hide it. We're not big enough to hide it. That's the problem. It's people like me. We're having to run two different roles. We're having to play politician and party insider, and those aren't necessarily the same thing. Or politician and activist, right? And those aren't necessarily the same thing. I'm more of a politician than an activist, so I get into this. Yeah, it's a strange role to play in the world where you're trying to be a county chair, but at the same time you're trying to be, a politician and bring people closer into your circle. And those at times there are those who want those to be different jobs. I think is the way to describe that. Yeah. But we're not big enough. We end up having to wear these same hats, and no one trains us how to do that. So we're either activists or politicians, and we fight with each other over that rather than say, hey, maybe we should train each other to be better at our jobs. I don't know. That's a little too insider. Sorry, I went. That's my problems. I apologize. I just dumped all my problems on you guys.
It's all good.
Well, Lars, one of the questions I guess I was going to ask you is, and you seem to have sort of answered it a little bit already, but I guess are you open to compromise solutions on the way to that North Star is what I was going to ask you. And I guess in asking about those compromises, where would you go to sort of get the institutional knowledge for those? Because I look at one of the people in our party who I think is maybe one of the best at this is Larry Sharp. Often talks about all kinds of different ideas on his show for ways he might improve one aspect or another of New York government if he were elected. Yeah. How would you, I guess, come up with some of these compromise positions on the way to that North Star?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you on Larry Sharp, so much so that 9 months ago, I hired Larry Sharp to help me with my messaging and help me with my policies. So a lot of our policies have the hand of Larry Sharp on them. A lot of the messaging is that, because I feel like he really is one of the better people that can take the libertarian message and disseminate it in a way that regular people can accept it and get on board with. And that's 100% what we need to do in order to get the message out there more. I was on a talk show recently and I said the word duopoly, and they were like, what's a duopoly? Right. So we have this like lingo in the Libertarian Party that sometimes we all know it, but when you talk to regular people, they don't understand. So we have to be able to break it down. An example of that is, one of the things that the Libertarian Party talks about all the time is end the Fed, right? That we're big on getting rid of this corrupt organization that constantly steals your money and steals your standard of living out from under you through inflation and through debasing our currency. And normal people, you say end the Fed, that sounds kind of scary to them, right? So the messaging we're using is to cut up the bank's credit cards, right? And that seems to be really resonating with people, because people were really against the bailouts. They're against big banks. They know that the crony capitalism is involved in the big banking cartels. And so they're all for that. And they also resonate with, they have to manage their own credit. And they know that the government is overspending. I often ask, do you think that the government is spending the money it takes from you wisely and efficiently? And I never get yes from anybody. It doesn't matter if you're full left. I was talking to a full socialist the other day, and he's like, yeah, they don't spend the money wisely or efficiently. And I'm like, so we can all agree that we're on that highway. And the highway is, at the end of it, is to get government as efficient as possible and spend whatever money it steals from us, at least wisely and efficiently. And he's like, yeah, I can get on board with that. So then I said, so that's how we start reducing government, because we're going to reduce the waste and the fraud. And once we get down, there's no waste and fraud anymore, then I'll start bashing away on my part of it, and you'll get off on that exit and I'll keep going, right? And so I think that's how we bring on board people who aren't libertarian to get to where we want to be. So you can even get a full socialist to agree that we should be reducing government.
Okay. That certainly sounds cool. Tim, were you about to say something? Yeah, I saw your eyebrows raised.
But you guys were talking about the duopoly and all that, and I was just going to say that I'm German and Irish, and I just want to kill everybody. So that's it for me.
Well, I that probably doesn't fit in with our non-aggression principle, but we can make exceptions here and there, I suppose.
I mean it metaphorically, of course.
Metaphorically,
But one of the things too that's a little bit different about this run, for 2024, is that we actually saw something happen in the world that's a little bit different for libertarians. We actually saw a guy in Argentina get elected as a libertarian. Jane, maybe you could bring up the visual on this. This is a recent story from The Economist on Milei, but boy, I tell you, I was so happy the night that I heard he won. I couldn't believe it. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, being a candidate running, did this give you extra inspiration? Are you really, what are your thoughts on seeing Milei out there on the world stage?
Well, I think, first off, we have to look at Argentina, 40, 50 years ago, where it was one of the most prosperous nations on the planet, was one of the most economically advantaged nations on the planet. And then it just went full socialist. It got more and more government and bigger and bigger government, more and more programs. And it eventually just turned into a total cesspool. That's essentially the end game for socialism and for collectivism. And so, I hope that we never have to get to the point where America is in that spot where we have to, elect somebody that's going to just completely turn the wheelhouse over. I mean, I love what he's doing. We'll see exactly how it plays out. I'm sure there's going to be hiccups. I'm sure there's going to be things that I don't agree with, but it's going to be a very interesting little example of a trial and error to see how these things work, because he's trying some massive changes that will greatly disrupt the economy, greatly disrupt people's lives. Hopefully it all turns out for the better. I think that it's definitely on the right track, moving towards free markets, moving towards getting rid of their currency problems, their endless inflation that's going on there. Living there even still right now is horrendous, and it's going to take years for this to unwind. All these 50 years of socialism doesn't go away overnight. And the thing about socialism is that when you start getting people kind of hooked on it, it's sort of like a drug. Right. It feels like there's no other option. Like this is the only way I can live. You become dependent on it like a drug. And so this is rehab. So Argentina's going through rehab. They've hit drug addict bottom, and now they're trying to, fix themselves. And they've got a process of fixing them. And that's what Milei is putting through. So I'm looking forward to see how it turns out.
Yeah, speaking of drug addict bottom, 250%, I think they got to inflation year over year. Oh my gosh. But you know what? If you're watching us on public access, that's the end of our time on public access, but you can catch this conversation goes on online, so you can catch the rest of the show on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or Facebook, or just go to knuckleheadsofliberty.com and you can find the rest of this conversation there. You can also find a lot of other great conversations, including the one we had with Lars almost a year ago. So go check that out. But anyways, back to the show. So boy, I tell you, Milei is just like, one of the things that occurs to me as I see this with all of the reduction of the size of government and everything else is it very much feels like that old Schwarzenegger line, no pain, no gain. I mean, you're going to have a little bit of pain to undo the damage that socialists have done to that country. Did you guys have any other thoughts on Milei before we move on? Or
I read an article today that he's laying off 70,000 government workers next month or in the next couple months or something like that. Yeah. So they've taken a chainsaw to the deep state over there. We'll see how that plays out.
It's I think it's great because it's going to give us kind of a roadmap, and even if it fails, we can dissect that failure and figure out where it failed and then reassess. And a lot of this is like I said, like running a company, like running a startup, and it's a lot of trial and error to get it right. And sometimes you screw up and sometimes you go 2 steps backwards, but eventually you get to where you want to go. You just have to keep trying at it and keep the nose to the grindstone. And eventually I think that the people of Argentina, not Venezuela, Argentina will be much better off, in the years to come because of this. I think they did the right choice in voting him in.
Yeah, if only Venezuela could get their own Milei.
Maybe they will.
Yeah, yeah. Well, another question I wanted to ask you. So, suppose you're, fortunate enough to get into office. What are your three main if you had to choose just three things that you could get done while you're in office? What would those be?
I think number one would be to I put forth a piece called the Voters' Bill of Rights. This is a piece of policy to unrig our election system. I think this is a critical thing. And regardless of whether I get in office or not, this is the piece that I really want to live on after I'm done. It's nonpartisan, and it's built so that states can enact it. The federal government can enact it. We've been handing it out to congressmen all across the country. We've been handing it out to state legislatures. Essentially, it levels the playing field for ballot access so that no party or affiliation has any different rules. It's the same for everybody, whether you're Republican or Independent or Democrat or Libertarian. The rules apply all the same. It gets rid of the gerrymandering, which is just a total, farce on the American public. That basically allows for Congress people to have a 20% approval rating and an 80% re-election rate, and that's because of this gerrymandering. It allows for transparency in our elections. It allows for any citizen to audit the vote. It allows for open source machine code so that we know what's in our election system, because even if we had fair elections today, no one would ever know. It allows for the restoration of, if you're a criminal and you've served your time, you get to get your voting rights restored, because no one should be made a criminal for life after they've served their time. It also allows for multi-district congressional districts. So right now, the federal government doesn't allow for states to change the way that they do districting. But say, as an example, California, we have 54, I think, congressional districts in the state of California. And if we wanted to, we could change, instead of having 54 separate congressional districts, maybe we have 10 that have 5 people in each. And what that would do is that would allow for some Democrats and some Republicans and maybe some Libertarians or maybe some Green Party or Independents or something to serve the people. I feel like we need to have a more broad coalition of people representing the regular Americans, and that's not in there right now. So there's a whole bunch of pieces to that, white papers on each piece, exactly how we would implement it, Lars24.com. Unrig the election system, Voters' Bill of Rights. It's a signature piece that I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the team, and I think that would go a long way to restoring the faith and integrity in our election system. And I believe that the reason we have had, say, the BLM riots and the January 6th stuff, it doesn't matter if you're left or right. Everybody is pissed off in America. People feel disenfranchised. People feel like their vote doesn't count. And when they don't feel like they can have a voice, they start rioting. Right? If they don't feel like they have any way to affect change other than like with physical violence or something like that, that's what happens. So this whole Voters' Bill of Rights is aiming at restoring some of that and healing the division that's in America today and putting us back on the right track where people feel represented and have a say in the system.
Wow, yeah.
So that was just one piece. The other two pieces I would just really quickly, I think, our economy clearly is rigged against regular people. And so that's a piece that I'm really, interested in. I don't like the income tax. I've been audited by the IRS multiple times, the Franchise Tax Board of California. I don't think anyone should go to jail for filling out a tax form wrong or not having a piece of paper. It seems completely ridiculous to me. We waste billions of dollars complying with tax code, millions and millions of man hours complying with tax code. We could be so much more efficient. This is one of the ways. We should abolish the income tax, let people keep 100% of their paychecks, and so that they can start having a better standard of living and a better life. And then I guess, just ending the bureaucratic state. There's a thing called the Plum Book, which is 7,000 positions that the federal government or that the president gets to appoint. And underneath those 7,000 is probably another 25 or 30,000 people. And so I would not fill any of those positions. I feel like the president has way too much power. If Congress thinks those positions should be still around, then they can create them. But we need to pull the power back from the president and return it to Congress where they should be doing their job.
So basically, afuera. A bunch of them. There you go. Yeah. As far as the tax thing goes, I think you talked in the last time we had you on. You talking about a fair tax? Then was that your what you were talking about going with? Or?
Yeah. So for me, the goal is no taxation. My ideal is no taxation. There is and so that's my North Star, and that's where I'm headed. But if there's any one path that I see right now that's currently available to ending the IRS, abolishing the 16th Amendment, it's the fair tax. I'm happy if somebody gives me a better alternative. But right now, that's the only bill that's before Congress that says abolish the IRS and end the 16th Amendment. So that's the one that I'm pushing for because it's something, right? It gets us in that direction. But it's not my ideal. My ideal is no taxes for anybody, no income tax at all. I mean, we didn't have income tax before 1913. We survived just fine. I think we should go back to, I wish America could go back to 1912 because we had no Federal Reserve and no IRS in 1912. So that would be my prime year that I'd like to go back in time to if I could.
We had tariffs, though. How would you?
I mean, you're going to have to pay for government in some way. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But if we have a vastly reduced government, that can help. And the other thing is that, I believe that one of the ways that we can vastly reduce our debt, vastly reduce our deficit spending is to grow the economy, grow GDP in a big, big way. And so what I'm putting forward for policy is a national energy race, because everything in our economy is touched by energy. The cost of energy is built into food and clothing and housing and everything that you do. And so if we could cut the cost of energy, say, by 50%, that would be a huge boom, not only to our economy, would drive a lot of jobs and corporations back into America because we would have really cheap energy, but also it's a national security issue, because right now we're relying on other countries for our energy, for oil and for gas, and we shouldn't be relying on that. So I have a whole energy policy built around abolishing the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and getting rid of regulations. There's 9,000 shovel-ready projects that would reduce energy. They're all backed up because of overregulation, and so we could get rid of those things and let the market work, let the market bring down the cost of energy and lift the standard of living for all Americans.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too, you talk about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I mean, as far as fission, which is actually there right now and can actually give us our, clean energy, so to speak, at least emissions wise, you've also got fusion that's just around the corner, it sounds like. So it's, there's companies that are talking about maybe bringing on industrial level next decade. I think there's something called a Tamarack or something like that that's going on over in Europe, and they have like a full-scale model, and they recently had some tests that went on in one of our government labs too. Not Sandia, but Livermore, I think.
Livermore,
and they actually had net energy created. So
it's super exciting. That is, to me, akin to humans discovering fire. Because if you have unlimited cheap energy, it completely changes the entire planet. It changes everything. It's a total game changer. So I'm super excited about that. I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime. I'm hopeful that it would. But right now, the regulations, France is kind of the leader in nuclear energy, and China is building 200 power plants across their country. So they're really racing, and we're being left behind. And whoever gets really cheap power first is going to be driving the engine of the global economy. And we need to be there in order to keep our standard of living high for all Americans. And I think that we're right now hamstringing our people by having overregulation. It takes 40 years to build a power plant in America, if we can even get one passed. In France, it takes 4 to 8 years. And, they are the least carbon offensive country in Europe right now. And they are literally selling all their power to Germany, who didn't build any plants and are, have had to fire up their coal plants because they lost their natural gas from Russia. And so they're basically burning coal, and they're probably wishing they had built nuclear power plants right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how easily people can go off track when you start to get some of this, I guess, cult religiosity into politics about what kind of energy it has to be, and then it's just
I'm not advocating for picking any winners or losers. If there's any energy that is cheaper or better, I'm all for it. I'm not nuclear only. I'm whatever energy we can get that reduces the cost of energy. Let's do it without having to have massive government subsidies into it.
Well, I think now it's probably a good time to get into the immigration issue. That's certainly a big issue that has been going on around the country, and we had some kind of topical stories around that kind of have some libertarian aspects to them, and so I wanted to bring some of those up. One of these is a story that's happening in the state of Washington. So they're trying to figure out how to deal with migrants that they're bringing in because they're coming in unprecedented waves over the border, and whether or not we've certainly talked about that in a lot of other shows as far as whether that's good or not. But the big issue is that they're coming to these places and then they're potentially not allowed to work, or there's difficulties in finding work. And the idea that some of these people have maybe real skills, and the idea that they're not allowed to work, or that they have to get a permit from the government, essentially called a license, in order to work. And it just seems like a kind of an interesting aspect, because certainly it seems like, well, why would we require these licenses for citizens and not necessarily for but then say, oh, the migrants don't have to because of some special rule. But one of I guess I'll let you guys jump on that. I did have a little bit more to add to this too as we go on, but what do you guys have on that as far as migrants versus citizens? I mean, we've been saying that, hey, we have to have these licenses for citizens, and suddenly migrants don't have to, but on the other hand, maybe it'll allow them to work. What do you guys think?
I think this is awesome, because it's government admitting that they overregulate people, and that in order to have a successful people, we have to have less regulation. That's literally what they're saying right here, right? And we saw this during COVID too, where they relaxed all kinds of rules. They're like, oh, it's COVID, so you don't have to do this, you don't have to comply with that anymore. That, like, one of the ones that I saw was you had restaurants where they were allowing you to buy alcohol and get alcohol delivered to your house from the restaurants, where that was never allowed before, because you had to have this special license and all this kind of stuff. And suddenly they said, well, during COVID, we're not going to enforce that, right? And then this immigration thing, what you're saying right here it hits home for me, because in Santa Cruz, we've always had a lot of immigrants in Santa Cruz because of the farm community that we have around here. And you see a lot of times they'll, a lot of people from South America countries will have little like food carts that they push around, and they'll sell, fresh fruit or something like that out of their food cart. And the local government here was starting to crack down on those people, and they were going to require them to have these licenses and all this kind of stuff. And eventually the local government gave up and said, you don't have to have a license for that. But they were still requiring licenses for, the business that the food cart was standing in front of, right? So if you had a food cart, no license. If you have a real business, we still want to tax you and take your money. It's clear that these regulations need to be put down, not just for immigrants, but for all people. Our economy would be going bananas if we didn't have so many regulations on it that just stifle innovation, stifle the ability to get into business to start with. Larry Sharp has a great story about, like you said, clipping hair, braiding hair. There was a whole group of people that come, and their whole profession was braiding hair, but suddenly they had to get, a $5,000 license in order to braid hair. I mean, how much damage can you really do braiding hair, right? Like, government doesn't need to be involved in that. Government doesn't need to be involved in what straw you can use, or what utensils you can use, or what kind of takeout bag you can have. It's sort of ridiculous. California, which we all live in, is just over draconian in this method, and they just want to regulate every single thing that you do. I'm surprised they haven't started regulating breathing yet and charging us for it.
No, don't give them ideas. God.
The funny thing was about this, when you bring up the COVID thing, and we actually have a little video clip for this too, but the jig was sort of up during COVID when you literally had people like Governor Whitmer saying that, okay, we're not letting anybody go out to get haircuts or anything else. And then when people protested that, she said, well, just Google how to cut hair. You can just do that. Why do you need can we get that little video clip? I think that's video clip 2.
Yep, just give me half a second. I clicked on the wrong thing. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm being stupid behind here on the. This is what happens, Jason, when you get me doing 3 things.
If you're one of those people that's going to Ohio, I pray that you are doing your part not to bring COVID-19 home, and that if you haven't resorted to that, Google how to do a haircut, or throw your hair in a ponytail or curl it and get through the next couple of weeks, and we can resume some of these things.
So there she is, just saying, hey, you really don't need a license. But, let me bring up to this video clip number 3, because this shows the pressure that government can put people under with that permission to work. And when they shut people down during COVID, and the fear that some people had that they were just going to have their licenses pulled, their permission to work pulled by the government if they didn't go along with whatever the state plans are. Jim, that video clip 3, can you pull that one?
I closed down on March 21st. That was the end of it for me. And it was going to be a couple of weeks, and with chances are we'd be back to work. Well, then when it became the 28th of May, it just killed me. I just went to my knees. I collapsed. I couldn't do it. I cannot go without income that period of time. I just can't do it. I got a small business here. I've been in business since 1961. I've taken care of myself and my family. I can't just, I'm scared, but I didn't really have any choice. I had to work through those fears and get some courage and open up. I'm still fearful that, maybe I'm going to get arrested. Maybe I'll have a big fine. Maybe, maybe I'll lose my license.
So that was his big fear, that he would lose his license if he went to work.
Yeah. That clip just really hits me hard, really. I'm feeling for that guy. I know personally a guy that was in Silicon Valley that ran a hair salon there. And he, they brutalized him. He lost tons and tons of money, had to mortgage his house in order to keep his business afloat. They hadn't made him have outside hair clippings, and then, came in and just told him all these different things that he needed to do. California was just overly draconian when it came to COVID. It's a damn shame that they did that. And there's, in hindsight, there's so many things that we all know that they did wrong. Is there any apology from the government? Is there any apology from any of the heads? Is Gavin Newsom like, hey, sorry guys, I screwed up? Is Nancy Pelosi like, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up? No, absolutely not. They have no shame, no regrets at all for just completely destroying people's lives. I think that guy's thing right there is like, I live in fear of being fined or my business taken down or me going to jail. No one should live in fear of those things for cutting hair. It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. If a person wants to go in and they have their haircut and another guy is willing to cut their hair and they both know the risks of COVID and of whatever is going to be happening, then they should be able to make that decision for themselves. And the government has no business in there telling them how to do it or not. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely horrifying. I think that we're going to look back on these days as really just a terrible decade, roughly, Yeah, it's just awful. But that there's a lot of other craziness that's happened that I think this immigration thing has maybe exposed too. And another one of these issues is what happened recently in I can't remember if it was one of the northern states where I think a migrant was arrested who had a firearm with him. And so the issue is that he's a migrant. He's, the law says he's not supposed to have a firearm, but, is that constitutional? Because apparently a judge thought that was unconstitutional, which is kind of weird. It's just sort of like this licensing issue. We have this area. I think this was around Illinois, in fact, because here's the open carry rules, and it says this was as of the end of last year. Illinois generally prohibits people. This is from, by the way, the Gifford Law Center, so they're big on gun laws. But they said it generally prohibits people from knowingly carrying or possessing a firearm in any public place or lands within the corporate limits of a city, village, or incorporated town. And I guess they have a few exceptions. But here was a migrant that was doing it, and then they went in front of the court, and suddenly it's unconstitutional. So I don't know whether to cheer or be a little upset with how the government's been abusing us. Well, what do you guys think of this? This sounds absolutely nuts that a jury has said that immigrants can carry, which maybe that's okay, but why have they been abusing us on this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a control issue. I mean, for me, there should be only one federal gun law, and that's the Second Amendment, and that's it, period. There should be no other federal gun laws. What states do, as long, they can do what they want as long as they're not infringing on that Second Amendment. And for this particular issue, I don't know the exact story, but for me, I don't mind if people have firearms. I mean, that's your right. That's your right to protect yourself. And I don't believe that the government should force people to be defenseless, right? The vast majority of people that own firearms, 99.999% of them, are good law-abiding citizens and aren't going to do anything bad. So why should we punish all of those people for a couple of bad apples? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. This is just a political toy. It's a political whipping boy, and it's just very clear to me that if you want to own a firearm, you should be able to do so, and the government should really stay the hell out of it.
Tim, I know you've got to have an opinion on this one.
I think I'm still in the information gathering stage because the Illinois judge ruled that it was the Illinois law prohibiting open carry and carrying in general, either open or concealed, was an unconstitutional law. But it took a situation or a case with an illegal alien involved, and not just a regular old citizen to come up. So. In my understanding that this particular judge was partial to the illegal alien seemingly more than the American citizen. Is this the gist of this whole thing?
Yeah, that could be. But I mean, also they relaxed all the open carry or concealed carry laws around the country, right? I mean, in Santa Cruz here, county where I live, no one could ever get a concealed carry permit before. And then about a year or so ago, I guess it was the Supreme Court that ruled that was unconstitutional. And, a bunch of my friends went out and got concealed carry straight away. And what was interesting about that was when they applied, the government really they hadn't had time to create bureaucracy yet. So they kind of sailed through and just got their open carry or their concealed carry really quick. But then within about 6 months or 9 months, the county started creating all kinds of rules and regulations of what you had to jump through. You had to have, this background checks and a psychiatrist check you out, and 4 people, give you backgrounds, and then a whole bunch of fees to be in the process and all this kind of stuff. So they just started adding on all these barriers to entry again. It was super interesting to watch how the Supreme Court gives this one ruling and it's wide open for 5 seconds, and then the authoritarians come in and just start locking it all down again with some new regulations. It's just crazy watching these people at work.
Okay, well, yeah. That's true. So I would side with the Illinois judge that that's an unconstitutional law to prohibit either. The law that Lars was talking about earlier was the one where they ruled.
Was that Bruin? I think it was the Bruin case or something like that. I can't remember which one it was. Oh,
it was before that. I can't remember which one it was, but they ruled you can either make it illegal to open carry or illegal to conceal carry, but you can't do both. Because you can't. That prohibits the people of the United States from carrying firearms, and so So, and that's part of the Second Amendment, the utilization of the word carry. And so that's my understanding. And so then from there, most municipalities realize that, if we're going to stop one thing or the other, but not both, then we're going to go after the open carry. And so thus, the municipalities that opened up concealed carry. Of course, with all the ramification Lars talked about there as time went on. So this Illinois law, I agree with the judge that it is unconstitutional, but I'm very suspicious as to why it took an illegal alien to bring this whole thing to the fore.
Yeah.
Well, my guess is it didn't, but my guess is it didn't. It's just this is the case that the judge was more sympathetic to this version of the case than it had been you or me, Tim. Is essentially what they're saying. That's
highly suspicious. Especially, I mean, I could make a case that and boy, is this a rabbit hole. But here we go. I could make a case that the Second Amendment says, like a few other amendments, not very often, where they utilize the word people, like in "we the people." And so the people is, to my understanding, the people that are citizens of the United States, and some other right where they say things like no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property, blah, 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 without due process, things like that. So, the definition of people versus person. Well, you can make the argument that people are the citizens, and a person is everybody else, even visitors, even illegal visitors. And so therefore, since the Second Amendment protects the people only, you can make the argument that, well, that's only for the people. So this Illinois law would apply to the illegal aliens, but not to the regular people, the citizens of the United States. So you could say that, I think. No?
It sounds as good as any explanation we'd get from the government, Tim.
Sounds like a South Park lawyer argument there, Tim.
Yeah, I know. It may have gotten lost in the weeds too. Who knows?
The Chewbacca defense. That's what that was.
Yeah.
Well, there was one aspect I just wanted as a footnote to this case. I have not been able to find anything talking about any other crime the guy committed. So it sounds like maybe that was part of the consideration here, is that the only offense was the firearm, and therefore, maybe the judge was looking for a way to let the guy go. I don't know, but hey, maybe it's to everybody's benefit in the end.
The two offenses, the firearm possession and the illegal status here in the United States.
Yeah.
So
except that they weren't arresting anybody for the first. That's the status of all that stuff now. But
the funny thing, and Lars, I'm sure appreciates this. There is no victim in either crime.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, there's one other sort of crazy thing that recently happened too around all this, and I guess maybe this has something to do with maybe the motive of why we're having such large amounts of immigration. But recently, the Republicans tried to push in, and James, maybe we could get a visual of this, a Senate bill that would essentially say that, hey, look, as far as for representation goes, when we count people in the census, it's only citizens that are going to count for that representation. And so this, it sounds like this probably got derailed. And just to give you a sense that, the other side, the Democrats think differently on this, one of Biden's earlier executive orders was essentially on trying to figure out ways to make sure we're counting all of them on the census. So, I mean, you can definitely see both sides have, different incentives, I guess, on this issue. Here's an article from Heritage where where they're talking about, hey, look, this is something, where, they don't think that this should count towards, representation. This is one of those issues where, to me, it feels like they probably shouldn't count. I mean, if they're not citizens and if the representatives are there to represent citizens, to me, it seems like that's probably the way this should be. What do you guys think on this issue? Because this is certainly a hot button issue that's probably going to keep getting addressed over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that just kind of stood out to me was you had both sides, right? That they both have an agenda, right? They want to push this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like just like COVID turned political, and it should have never been politicized. It should have been, up to your own choosing and your own desires, how you were going to handle it, and your own between you and your doctor. This has become political, as so many things are in America, where the Republicans and Democrats use this as a fundraising tool. They are literally using human beings to fundraise, and it's disgusting to me on both sides. They don't really seem to want to fix this problem at all. They want to continue this problem, and they want to continue to push fear in both directions so that Americans are polarized. And this is the case on so many issues that we have, right? And the way I look at it is, I don't want to see any more mothers and children going across rivers and having to climb under barbed wire to escape asylum from whatever horrors that are happening for them. I don't want to see children ripped away from their parents, regardless of where they're from. That is ridiculous to me. Our entire system is built to have chaos, to have pure chaos, and have a lot of fear going on. And so my whole immigration stance is that we have to end this chaos. We have to streamline this system that makes it super easy. There should be no illegal immigrants in America. Everybody should be able to come here and get through and have a opportunity, just like my grandparents did, to have a better working life for themselves and their families, to flee whatever is going on. But beyond that, I believe that America is complicit in all of the problems that are going on south of the border with the 50-year failed drug war, because we have created cartels. The cartels are destabilizing these countries. We have handed monopolies to these cartels, and we have to end the failed drug war. And then that will stop a lot of the problems at the southern border. People, I don't believe, want to flee their homes and their families and their lifestyle that they have, other than for economic issues. But if they're not having economic issues, they want to stay where they're at. But if your life is in danger, you're going to flee. That's just the way that it is, right? And you're going to want to try to get your family out of that. And look, America is full of people that fled Europe to get away from all kinds of problems there, political persecution, religious persecution, economic disparity. We need to have a path that's easy to understand. Right now, there's 21 visas that are required, that 21 different visas that you can go through. It's really a complex bureaucratic mess. We can streamline this. We can get it down to 3 types of visas: a worker visa, an asylum visa, and an immigrant visa, and just make it super streamlined. Let everybody be able to come into America, get the job that they want to do. We should be matching corporations with people that want to work so that we can do that. We have a huge problem going on right now with the baby boomers are retiring. We have our labor force participation is at 50-year lows right now because there's so many people retiring and there's just not enough labor force to take care of it all. And that's, you see that play out in Japan right now, and it's playing out now in China. Economies fail when there's too many people that need to rely on too few people working. So I think we need to get a lot more workers in, and we're not going to do it by having babies because they don't grow up fast enough. And I live in Silicon Valley area and in farming communities, and I see the need for workers in all of these areas, and they're not being filled. So I think that we've got to stop treating this as a political football, and we need to treat people with respect and streamline the system so that we don't have the chaos that we have right now.
It sounds like it. I guess a short summary might be stop the perverse incentives on both sides, whether it's the incentives that we have that maybe have free government stuff on one side, but also government policy that's destroying their country on the other side and causing them to move.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, a big part of it is ending the welfare state. Obviously, we can't have tons and tons and tons of people coming and then relying on the welfare state. But I think the vast majority of people coming across the border right now are just looking for a better life, just like people came from Europe back in the day, and they're willing to work hard and they're willing to put in the sweat equity to earn their spot in the American dream. And I think that we should allow that because it lifts all of us up. It betters all of us economically if we do that.
Okay.
They're
Do you
not
guys have a?
imported by? I thought they were being imported by the DNC to vote Democrat.
But I wouldn't put it past the DNC to do that.
Well, they can't vote, but what they can do is rescue some of the declining numbers they have in places like LA, New York, and some of these places that have been losing population. They can replace some of that population, and we have historically counted every person during the census, and I'm sure the hell not going to want any of these two groups of yahoos to make a change. And whether I agree with the change or not, I'm not going to agree with any of these yahoos because you can't trust their motives, right?
At all.
You can't trust their motives.
Their motives are to line their pockets.
Discussion.
Their motives are to line their pockets and stay in office. So you can't trust that.
You can't trust their motives. So you stick with what we've historically done, and we've historically counted every person as for apportionment. And so you do that. And as long as citizens get to vote, that's kind of the one thing that citizens have that non-citizens don't, right? It is the right to vote. That's our one thing. And so as long as that maintains itself, then you count everybody. And I think is the best way to do that.
Okay. It certainly does seem, though, James, like they're letting them in as fast as they're escaping California. Until they put a wall to keep people in California, they're going to find a way to keep them.
I'm sure Newsom would back that plan. I 100% think he would be all for building a wall around California to keep us all in here.
Yeah, they want those congressional seats back, right? They really do.
We lost those. I mean, look, remember when a few years ago when they proposed the wealth tax? And then people said, well, we'll just flee the state. And then they said, well, we'll follow you for 10 years. Even if you live somewhere else, we'll come and get you. Right. So that's the kind of authoritarian that Gavin Newsom is all about. And Lord help the day if he ever becomes president of the United States.
He wants to implement an exit tax. And I remember a country back in the 40s that did that.
Well, America has an exit tax. America has an exit tax. If you decide to give up your citizenship, it's like 30-something% of your assets. And believe me, they will take them right out of your bank.
Yeah. I think that's after the first 2 million or something like that, or first million. So essentially they're trying to say, hey, don't worry, it's not going to.
Yeah, how kind and giving of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Only capture and create a prison for wealthy individuals, apparently.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, that's almost everybody who owns a home now.
Yeah.
Maybe the rest of us can move to Mexico, right? I guess that's what the rest of us can do.
Yeah. Well, when they see us passing them on the way, they're on the way in and we're on the way out. Go back.
Costa Rica has a big expat population down in Costa Rica. So yeah, it happens. It happens.
Well, we are getting near the end of the show, and that's about the time when we bring up our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And so this time, it's not a super recent thing, but it was earlier this year. Biden was asked about one of his many military campaigns around the world, and this one had to do with bombing the Houthis, who were, I believe, allying themselves with the Palestinians, and yet one of our many conflicts around the world. I guess you choose just spin a dial and we'll figure out which one it's involving. But the thing was, he was asked, well, is this working? And here was his answer. James, can you bring up KNP number 1?
Are the airstrikes in Yemen working?
Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
So there you go. So, and James,
the bombings will continue until it works. So says Joe Biden, Raytheon CEO. I mean, President of the United States.
Well, James, maybe you could bring up the visual real quick too, so we can see the story. And the Houthis essentially they're like pirates, so they're going out there and they're robbing ships and they're claiming they're doing it to support, I guess, Palestine. And it's funny because this was, that was in January, I believe, when that was said. And we can look at the results of that policy. Here is an AP story from, I believe this is from early March. And it says, first fatal attack on shipping by Yemen Houthi rebels escalates risk. So I mean, this is a month or two after he said, let's just keep on bombing. It doesn't seem to be working. Now they're talking about Houthis could partner with Iran and Somali pirates. So I don't think that whole strategy is it's really doing a whole lot of anything. But anyways, I just wanted to put it in context.
Yeah. Yemen is a mess. It's been civil war there for quite a while, and this is all just more Middle East conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia and their proxy wars all over the Middle East. It's and to be fair, America has its hand deeply in this. We've been having our fingers in Iran and Saudi Arabia for decades, and we keep switching sides and arming one side and arming the other side. And we need to end our imperialism, end our pushing of our agendas overseas. We spent 20 years replacing the Taliban with the Taliban, and we didn't learn from Russia when they tried to do it. We went in and said we were going to somehow do this. And the American government we can't even police our own cities. We can't police San Francisco, and we can't police Detroit. But somehow the powers that be in Washington think that we can police the entire world. And we're $34 trillion in debt. We're broke. We can't afford any more wars. We can't afford to buy any more bombs to drop on children in faraway lands. We need to just pull this all back and get out of this mess. It's just ridiculous that we're still doing this. Every time a war ends, it's like 3 weeks before the next one starts up. They literally can't go 2 weeks without killing somebody somewhere on the planet. Yeah.
So what about aid? What about aid to Israel to help them in their horrible situation with Gaza?
I'm like I just said, we're $34 trillion in debt. We can't afford to pay anybody anything, anywhere at all. It doesn't matter who it is. We're broke. We're so broke. We're going to literally print $1 trillion of debt to pay for the interest this year. And what that means is that your food prices are going up. Your housing is going up. Your healthcare costs are going up. And so every time we send money to some foreign country, that means you're voting to have prices go up on you and your standard of living go down. I don't think any American would vote for that. That's ridiculous. No, we got to stop sending money overseas. We don't have it. We're broke.
Yeah. My favorite part is that the debt to GDP ratio of Israel is 58% and declining. And ours is 124.5% and climbing. Yeah. And I don't blame them for asking, but boy, that's a lot of nerve to ask us for us help in them. Why can't they go into debt? They're in less debt to GDP than we are. So how about they? It's like of course you make the best point of all is that we're broke and we can't afford it. But also, it's like, gee whiz. You really got a lot of nerve, Israel.
Well, it seems so terrible, too, because this argument to stabilize the world is what everybody says. We got to do this, but we're destabilizing ourselves, as Lars just said, with all of our prices going up and everything getting out of hand at home.
When have we stabilized the world? Yeah, tell me in my entire life, has anything we done that really stabilized the world? Maybe World War II, maybe stabilize the world, but other than that, and when is the last time Congress declared war? Oh, that's right. That's
December
right.
8th.
Yeah.
December 41.
Imagine that. So the last time that Congress actually declared war was the one time that maybe we stabilized the world. The rest of it, my entire life, we've been over there bombing places and creating destabilization. No, this is just imperialistic, military industrial complex war machine marching through, and they sell it They sell it with fear. The weapons of mass destruction. The evildoers are coming for you. The evildoers are going to invade America if we don't stop them over there. It's just a bunch of malarkey, and it's got to stop.
I think it's worse than that. I think it's pure hubris. The very fact that we think you can stabilize the world. When has the history of the world ever been stabilized in any form? It has never existed. But yet we think we can do it. Oh yeah. That's gonna go well. Give that a whirl.
Yeah.
Can't even stabilize ourselves.
Well, and the worst part about it all, too, is it very much feels most of the time like we're firing into a crowd, hoping to hit a bad guy, because most people don't even know where the places are that we're fighting in this country. And it's just, I can't think of anything less moral. Yeah. But anyways, that's pretty much the end of the show tonight. So Lars, I wanted to bring back up your page and see if you had any final thoughts that you wanted to leave the audience with as we exit.
Perfect. Yeah. So, one thing that we didn't talk about that I really want to talk about is that I have a plan to deny both Trump and Biden the presidency on election night. And what that is it's winning electoral votes on election night and causing a contingent election under the Constitution. This happened actually 200 years ago this year with John Adams. And what happens is if no candidate gets 270 electoral votes, it goes to the House of Representatives to decide who's going to be president of the United States. And you all saw how contentious it was when they were picking the Speaker of the House. And when they did this 200 years ago, it took 36 votes before they could figure out who's going to be the president. And they can pick the vice president and the president separately. So you could end up with something silly like Donald Trump as president and Joe Biden as vice president, or the reverse, or they might pick a libertarian candidate. So this is the path to victory for libertarians. This is the path for national media attention. We're already boots on the ground in Omaha, Nebraska, and in Portland, Maine. These are two places that split their electoral vote. This is totally achievable. We only have to get 250,000 votes in either of these areas. And this is what my plan is all about, is denying Trump and Biden the 270 needed so that we can get national attention. There's so many people in America that are pissed off that we have to choose between these two clowns. More than 50% of people disapprove of either of them. There's more people that are independent voters now than there are Democrats and Republicans. It's time to send the middle finger to duopoly, win these electoral votes, and send these clowns packing so that we can wake America up, get every American to Google what is libertarian, grow the Libertarian Party so that we can get freedom for people, so that we stop the endless growth of government, this endless authoritarian state. And this is the plan that I'm pushing. I'm looking for support nationwide from anybody. You don't have to be a libertarian, because this is a message that resonates with people who are disenfranchised, disaffiliated, and pissed off at the system. Help me send the middle finger to the duopoly by unrigging the system and winning some electoral votes on election night and causing a contingent election. You can find out more at lars24.com.
Wow, that's
awesome message.
Right off your lips.
well, certainly awesome message. And, the whole thing is about, getting these libertarian ideas out there so that people know there's more than just this duopoly out there that, isn't getting us anywhere except into a hole fast. But thanks so much for watching us. And, if you're watching us online or whether you're watching us on public access, think about before the next week what you can do in your region. Is there something that you can do to move the ball for liberty? Because, it's all about everybody getting up and trying to do something in their community to make us all a little more free. So just think about that before the next show. And until then, stay tuned and stay free.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.